Hey guys, and welcome back to the Movie-Club Emporium. And I'm super excited for this week's review because we are talking about a movie that is criminally under talked about. And it's 2021's, I don't know why I said it like that, not too. It's 2021's Antlers. This is a movie that sadly, much like the film Underwater, was part of that the movies that were kind of left on the slate when the Mouse House bought Fox. It was also during lockdown. So nobody talks about this movie, and it's sad because this movie is absolutely fantastic. This is from Scott Cooper, who made Out of the Furnace, Crazy Heart, his first kind of horror movie. But it's interesting because it's definitely a horror movie, but you can definitely feel his type of filmmaking, kind of that grimy, sooty Americana kind of look to it. Because we're taking place up in Oregon, and it is about Carrie Russell, who is a teacher, and a young boy in her class, and he, as a very young boy, having to deal with the problems of his dad and brother being infected with the Wendigo. And I gotta tell you, man, so we all kind of have growing up with our friends, we all kind of had our specific monster that we kind of were dragged to those movies. And Shaw's was always the werewolf. He's a big werewolf guy. So I watched a lot of good and not so good werewolf movies. But watching this movie, and then thinking of things like there's the Larry Fessenden movie, Wendigo. There's a great episode of the third season of Masters of Horror, but the show is called Fear Itself. That's a whole video in of itself to talk about that weird anthology. With Doug Jones becoming a Wendigo. And then kind of this, and and if you read Stephen King's novel Pet Sematary, there's Wendigo in that as well. Wendigos are criminally underused. I gotta tell you, especially considering when you think about they really are, our own personal American cryptid. I mean, you have Bigfoot, but there's also the Yeti, so he has, relatives abroad. They have the Loch Ness Monster, things like that. Really kind of the Wendigo is because it comes from native folklore and indigenous peoples that it's kind of our own, like a little American monster, and they're really terrifying. I guess in some ways you're the skinwalkers as well. But no, the Wendigo, and I will tell you right now, the Wendigo effects in this movie are fantastic. It looks absolutely terrifying. But getting back into it, so first of all, Carrie Russell and then Jesse Plemons, who plays her brother / the town sheriff. They're both fantastic. Shouldn't be as any surprise. She's moved back home after the death of her parents, her mother, I guess. Her father died a while back. There's parts of the movie that talk about she sees this poor boy is dealing with psychological trauma. His, of course, is from his father being turned into a Wendigo. Hers is from her father's abuse toward her. So you get to deal with the trauma of that. They're both dealing with trauma. They're fantastic. The boy who plays Lucas in this movie, though, I don't have his name. He is phenomenal. He just looks so like the world. He's only supposed to be like maybe 10 years old, 12 years old, and the world has already beaten this poor kid down. And it's just heartbreaking, his performance in this movie. What helps with that is the score of this film. It's very haunting, very melancholic, uh, very simple, and I love that about it. And of course, it helps with the setting of it being, we're on the coast in the Northeast. It's gray and gross and rainy and nasty all the time. Um, yeah, like I said, the creature effects in this movie are fantastic, both the digital and the practical effects. I guess they actually built of like a full size Wendigo, and he looks fantastic. What really works in this movie is because it's not a horror guy directing it. Because like, you feel like so many horror directors now, it's all about we got to get those scares, we got to get those jump scares, we need those. It came with the Paranormal Activity trailers. We got to get those scenes of people just losing their minds in the theater. This movie doesn't have that. This movie, honestly, the scariest parts of this movie are in the silence right before like all hell breaks loose. Um, and the ending, I gotta tell you, I had not seen this movie. Um, I just remember seeing the cover, the very great cover, and being like, oh, cool, a Wendigo movie. I'll get around to that. Kind of feel like everybody else did, and then just never got around to it. Which definitely leads to probably why it was kind of forgotten, but should be reevaluated, like Underwater, because they're both fantastic horror movies. Because this movie is dark. And honestly, toward the end, I was holding my breath, not sure if it was going to go darker than it already does. It does have a very kind of dour climax, third act, but I honestly was like, oh, not knowing if the movie could go even further with that. Um, and I really liked when a movie can make me like kind of internally stress about what they're gonna do. Especially now seeing a whole bunch of horror movies. I cannot. I can keep going and going. I cannot stop singing the praises of this movie again for not. This movie was just sadly because of its tone and between the lockdown that was going on, and I guess there was contractual obligations that before they could put it on a streaming service, it had to go to theaters. So like in the middle of like theaters being closed, they put it in the theaters for a minute and then yanked it right back out so they could stream it. It was buried on Hulu with some of the other acquired things from that Fox buyout, and just kind of left to rot, and which is sad. I mean, it's befitting for the feel of this movie, but it's sad because this is a really great modern horror film. It's a great creature feature with a creature that is not only terrifying but well underutilized, and we should see more Wendigo stuff. I don't want an overabundance of it. I don't want like it to turn into the next like possessed kid movement, but I really enjoyed this movie. The acting in it's fantastic. The art, the direction of it is fantastic. The music is fantastic. All in all, like a surprise hit for me. I wish I had seen this in 2021 because it would have made for sure my top best of list that year. This movie was absolutely fantastic. It blew me away about how great it was. And sadly, because of the circumstances surrounding it on the outside in the real world, it's kind of lost. A brand, think about a movie that's 2 years old, 3 years old now. It's kind of lost because nobody talks about this movie. So I'm talking about it because you should talk about it and watch it and share it with your friends. Say, hey, watch Antlers. Pretty rad. I don't think that sells it really well, so maybe don't do that. But check out Antlers. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere, but you can get it for super cheap on physical media, on Blu-ray and stuff. I think I got it eBay for like $6. So you can get it, and you should, because it's fantastic. So next week, guys, I told you a couple weeks ago, I kind of did a nostalgia buster movie that was a huge fixture of Amber's childhood. I wouldn't say I raked it over the coals, but maybe I wasn't as rose-colored glasses as some might be growing up. So it's only fair to get what you give. So next week we're doing my own nostalgia buster, and I'm super excited and nervous to talk about Dick Tracy. So put on your yellow jacket, flatten that top. Try not to think too much about a 1990 Madonna because you won't get any work done. And we'll come back next week and talk about Dick Tracy. But until then, go watch Antlers. Sorry, that was aggressive. All that 90s Madonna. Bye.